reality is when it comes to software consumption and usage at work or in general, we're still in the first inning of this whole thing called software.
Over the past few years, there's been a change in how information flows between people. Gone are the days where we'd log into computer terminals and draft emails. Now we text, tweet, and instant message and post. That's at least how it is person to person. When it comes to person to computer, we still wheel up our chairs and poke at keyboards the old way. That's what Dan Reich noticed when he started his company, Troops. A startup veteran, he envisioned a system where an AI assistant could bridge information between employees and computers with the same ease and fluidity of two buddies texting about a baseball game. On this episode of UpTech Report, Dan explains how it works. Dan, I'm excited to chat with you today, learning more about Troops. To begin, can you share what is Troops in 5 seconds? Very brief, what is it?
Sure. So Troops connects your most important business information and workflow from your entire technology stack, like your CRM and Salesforce, to where the humans are living, which we believe to be are the enterprise messaging systems like Slack and Microsoft Teams.
Connecting where to where the humans are, all your systems. And on your site, I actually like you say the nervous system. Interesting analogy. Where did you see originally the problem that existed? You're like, all right, we need to solve this.
So, my whole life I've been doing this startup thing and having many conversations with prospects, customers, recruits, and so forth. And in general, any and every company on earth needs a way to manage all of this. They need a way to manage information on their customers, their revenue, their pipeline. We've known that category to be CRM. We know companies like Salesforce to be the leader, but we also know all of these products have been built with software paradigms over the past 10, 20 years. Basically, the software looks like a bunch of fields, forms, buttons, and boxes. And in all of the instances where I've done my job and that of my partners, you always get into the situation where the people on the front lines, the sales reps, the account managers, their job should be having conversations with customers, yet 50%, if not more of the time, there's this administrative pain that happens behind the scenes, which is a manager complaining, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Rep, go update Salesforce or go do an X, Y, and Z in this database. And so on one hand, you hire incredible humans to do very high quality, complicated work. And at the same time, you're asking them to do this very robotic, mundane, administrative work that sucks up all their time. And by the way, if they don't do that piece of work, then the rest of the organization doesn't know what they're up to. It doesn't know what's happening with the deals or the customers. If they don't know that information, then they can't understand how much money they'll make. Then they can't do hiring, they can't do budgeting, they can't have shareholder meetings or investor meetings or board calls. Like the business literally grinds to a halt, and there's incredible tension that ensues, unhappy people leave, and the thing just becomes incredibly messy. And so that's a problem. And so in short, we felt like that could be fixed. It needed to be fixed. And when we started the company in 2015, around that time, 6 of the top 10 most used apps in the world were messaging apps. Think Snapchat, Instagram. And we're like, man, here we are where we spend a third of our lives sleeping, a third working, a third probably watching TV. And yet it's so delightful in terms of how we interact with our friends. Hey, texting, how's your date? Or what are you doing tomorrow? And yet we go to work, like that same ease of use doesn't exist. And so we felt like that was inevitable. It would change. And we felt like messaging would invade the work environment in a very different way than we've seen before. And so the question we asked is, what if we could solve that problem by building what felt like an intelligent assistant that helped you with your job? So instead of having to log into this painful database, you would get a message or series of messages that alerted you and provided you with the right signals on important actions to take. So let me give you an example. If I just had a meeting with Coca-Cola as a prospective customer, and that meeting was at 2:00, once that meeting was over at 3:00, Troops would send a message to me saying, hey, Dan, how did your meeting with Alex from Coca-Cola go? Are there any notes or next steps that you want to log? Or maybe things like who's the decision maker or what's the budget, or any criteria that's important for me and my business, I'd be able to get a notification on, update, and then propagate that information back into the system. And that's broadly applicable to anybody, whether you're a salesperson, whether you are a customer success person or account manager, whether you're in service or support. The idea of telling a human that something important is happening or is not happening, acting like a central nervous system for the business, and letting them quickly act on it, especially in this environment and especially in a remote work from home environment, is just absolutely necessary, we believe, today. So if you think about what we're doing, we live on top of these pretty massive business systems and data sets, whether it's products like Salesforce or your ticketing and service systems like Zendesk or your business analytics systems like Looker, what have you. These are massive underlying data sets that are the systems of truth for an organization. And so by seeing this data, that gives us the ability to send signals off of things that are happening or are not happening. And so, for example, we can send signals that are predictive in nature. So if we see, for example, that a $5 million deal is in the contracting stage, but no one's spoken to them or emailed them or had any contact with them in 245 days, unlikely that deal is going to close. Something's wrong. And so we would be able to notify or send a signal to that account manager or CEO, letting them know that this is happening, or in this case, not happening, and let them quickly take action. And so in that regard, yes, we are building and supporting very smart and intelligent signals so that people can do their jobs more effectively.
Your current then marketplace or industry that you're focusing on, do you have any specific sectors or size of companies as well that are mainly using and you're going after?
Great question. Since we've primarily focused on, to start, working with platforms like Salesforce and Slack, which is the largest in its category and until recently the fastest growing in its category, we felt like that was a good beachhead. And so to the extent you use those products, and also Google email and calendar, Gmail and calendar, you can be a customer. And today we work with really small companies, startups, just several people, all the way up to Fortune 500 and publicly traded companies as well. So some of our customers include customers like, but not limited to, Slack, Twilio, Looker, envisioned, Flexport, Andela, Cameo. And so these are really amazing and fast growing companies. And it's exciting. And the reason they use a product like Troops and our solutions are because they, like we, recognize that in order to scale and grow fast, you need to be incredibly agile and stay on top of everything. And the way to do that is to do so with the least amount of friction. And they believe that this is the best way to solve those issues.
Why Troops, the name?
So it's funny, when we started, like any business, you always ask, what will the name of this thing be called? And so we picked Troops because we felt like it was a good play on troops in the trenches, or people being on the front lines. And so when you think about salespeople or customer facing folks, they're always on the front lines. And so because they're on the front lines, we thought that Troops was a fun play on lingo and phrases that I feel like many sales leaders and organizations use anyway.
So looking forward from here, you said your beachhead, Slack and Salesforce, and that's where you started, and that's where you've built a good base so far. Looking forward from here, you already gave me a little clue when we were chatting before. What's the next step, and where are you headed?
Yeah. So if you think about where the world is headed, people have heard phrases like software is eating the world. And the reality is, when it comes to software consumption and usage at work or in general, we're still in the first inning of this whole thing called software. I don't even know what your computer screen looks like, but I got to believe you have, several tabs, if not many, many more open at once, with immense context switching. And so the reality is, in the future, there's only going to be more SaaS companies, more pieces of software that people will need to use and will use. And therefore, there will also need to be a greater need for integration and automation between these pieces of software and between all this information. And perhaps most importantly, is there's going to be a greater need to make this easier for the human beings that have to do their job. If you are a person that has to flip between 20 different tabs to do your job, whether it's updating your pipeline in one system and updating your timesheet in another and updating your time off in another and updating your forecast in another and updating your manager in another and so on and so on and so on, how the hell is any company going to be able to effectively hire, train anybody, let alone make them successful? And to exacerbate that, how are you going to do that when the markets are changing, whether it's COVID or the next issue that happens, and your whole business needs to change, and now your 10, 100, 1,000 person organization needs to adjust on the fly and learn new processes and systems. Like it's just not going to happen. And so in the future, we believe this problem only gets bigger, and therefore also equally believe there will be a greater need for technology to sit between, in an intelligent and elegant way, all of this really important information and the humans and where the humans live. And so in a more literal sense, in the future, you can expect Troops to integrate with and partner with more companies beyond Salesforce, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's companies like Zendesk or Intercom or HubSpot and so on. And then on the other side, not just work with Slack, but the other mediums in which organizations are spending a disproportionate amount of their time doing work.
What's a good first step for someone to take, and where should they go to learn more?
Yeah, great question. Best first step would be to go to our website at troops.ai, and you can get a demo with you can enter in your information and someone can reach out and get a demo. You could also just create an account and get going for free. And sure enough, hopefully someone will reach out for a conversation as well to help you be successful in your setup.
Be sure to check out part 2 of my conversation with Dan, in which he talks about starting his first company in high school and offers some tips on getting funded and landing the first client.